resentment. It caused a lot of resentment among the people and aggression. And ma'am, it was considered as if a threat to the Indian society because of some reasons, like there were many social reforms, like they had demolished, the British did not agree to the religions like sati, and they promoted women education and all that. So the Indians, they were very oppressed by it. They didn't want all this to happen. So ma'am, it was a really, they felt that it is a threatening to them. The Britishers are not agreeing to them and they are ruling anything they are doing. So like, yes ma'am. And the second thing is that the efforts, the missionaries had also were taking efforts, and they were trying to spread the Christian religion, the Britishers. So which angered the Pandits and the Maulvis of the Muslim and the Hindu religion.
Yes. So basically, let me just complete this. Social, children, we've already completed economic and political causes of revolt of 1857. Today, we are going to learn about social and religious causes. So now, social and religious causes, the word social itself will, is giving you a hint that this is related to society. Okay. So what had happened? The establishment, because of the British rule, what had happened was the British rule was accompanied by spread of Western culture, because definitely when the British started ruling, the Western culture started spreading, and people were very they got very disappointed because of this. If you compare the previous society, Indian society, they were quite religious. They were very close to the religions. They had strong beliefs in the gods, whichever gods they were preaching. And all of a sudden, if a new culture was brought up into the society, this was not acceptable to them. All right. People were disturbed by the spread of this alien civilization, they called it as, okay, because they did not like this Western culture. All right. And they considered this Western culture to be brought in India as a threat to the Indian culture. That was but obvious. If everybody will leave their own culture and follow Western culture, definitely their own culture, which got roots, okay, from India itself, will not be followed by most of the people. Okay, so there like this. There are several examples. Few examples have been mentioned below. First is social reforms, such as abolition of sati and female infanticide. As you all know, earlier Indian society, they used to practice sati, and they also practiced female infanticide. Okay, now these two things the Britishers had abolished, which they did not like. They were like, okay, how come you are making changes in the tradition which we are following since years? All right, now instead of that, what things they brought? They brought Widow Remarriage Act. They also brought women's education. If you will see, the earlier Indian society did not allow women to step out of the house. Women were only considered to do household work. So now bringing women's education, that means women are going to step out of the house to have education. That was something which was not acceptable. Again, remarriage of widow was not acceptable by most of the people, because they all had the orthodox culture which they were following since years, and they believe whatever they are doing was right. So this created what? Disappointment among most of the Indian society. Got it? So this was one of the social causes. Along with that, if the Britishers brought up the Widow Remarriage Act, somewhere or the other, it also hurted their religious sentiments, right? Their social customs. Second cause was, since the Britishers brought their own culture, what they did, they started spreading Christianity, okay, in the overall Indian society. Now, and they were trying to convert maximum people into Christianity. Now, this again disappointed most of the Indian people. Why? Because here in India, we had people following different religions and living together. But now, since one particular region was promoted, the other religions, that is Hindus and Muslims, felt affected by it. Okay, they were disappointed. So this was the second cause. Let's see the third cause.
Yes, ma'am. So the third cause was that these Britishers, they spread Western.
Understood the two causes which I had just explained?
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone understood the two causes?
Yes,
Number
ma'am.
one was
Yes,
related to, what was the first cause?
ma'am, the spread of Western civilization.
Okay, spread of Western civilization, and
That
what else?
was, it was considered a threat to the Indian society and the
Very
culture.
good. Very
Ma'am,
good.
the second cause was social reforms like sati and female infanticide, and widow remarriage act was also introduced,
Yes.
and women education was also introduced, that caused a deep
So
resentment
they felt,
among.
yes, very disappointed. And what was the other cause? What about Christian missionaries?
Ma'am,
Yes, yes.
The Britishers led the Hindu,
All right. So the next is the introduction of Western education. Initially, they brought education. Now they brought Western education into the schools. Earlier, if you will see, the earlier Indian society had, gurukuls, where a small teacher would sit, and a religious teacher would preach. They would sit under the tree. They with some few students, and they would give the knowledge. But now they brought Western education. Now, because of this, what had happened? The Western education undermined the position and importance of the Pandits and the Maulvis. Okay, so because of Western education, who felt disappointed? Who was hurted? The feelings of Pandits and Maulvis. Why? Because whatever knowledge they were spreading through Western education was completely against the religious knowledge which they were imparting. Okay, so here the Pandits and the Maulvis felt disappointed. The office of the inspector of school in Patna was referred to as the Shaitane Daftar. Okay, so this is just a example to make you all understand that this is how the
ma'am, so the British referred it
and gradually each part of the Indian society felt disappointed. Their sentiments were getting hurt because of these Britishers. Now, what was the third cause? No, not the third cause. I think this was the fourth cause, right? Yes? Is it the
ma'am,
fourth
just
cause?
now was the fourth.
Yes. The introduction of railways and posts and telegraphs aroused grave doubts and fears, especially among the simple villagers, because for them this was something very new, and they were not ready to accept what is going on. All right, how come railways have come? How come postcards and telegraphs have come? And they were getting afraid of this. They thought that telegraph system was a form of a Western magic. See, Indians were not educated. They were innocent people. Okay. So for them, this was something very new, very different. Now for y'all are smiling. I could make out from your faces that it seemed very funny to y'all. But for them, it was something very like a surprise. They could not accept it. They grew fearful of the intentions of the Britishers. Okay. They were already suspicious about these Britishers. So whatever actions they were doing, the Britishers were doing, they got more suspicious about them. All right. Next is the British judicial system introduced the principle of equality. Now, if you remember, earlier Indian society was divided into classes, right? You had Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, right? And then
Shudras.
you had
Shudra.
untouchables. Shudras. You had untouchables also. They were not allowed to enter temples. They were not allowed to take water from the well. They had classes. They had upper class, lower class, middle class. And upper class always enjoyed few powers, which was not given to the lower class. Now, these Britishers, when they came, what did they introduce? The principle of equality.
Ma'am, equality.
Yeah, that means a Brahmin sitting with an
Shudra.
untouchable. Yeah, Brahmin sitting with an untouchable allowed to enter the temple.
Temple.
Right? So that was something which hurted their feeling, and they were disappointed because of this to a greater extent. Why? Because they were not ready to accept this fact that a Brahmin coming and sitting next to an untouchable coming and sitting next to the Brahmin. In fact, they also had the path, the roads, the ways different. They could not even touch them. Even if a person touches, an untouchable happens to touch by accidentally a Brahmin, it was considered as a, as if the Brahmin has done some great mistake.
Ma'am, in Hindi it says it is a pap.
Yeah, it is a path for them, right? Now, but then here it was completely different. They brought equality, the principle of equality. So this was also again not acceptable. Next is the British looked down on the Indians and followed the policy of racial discrimination. They made no effort to interact socially with the Indians. They were convinced with the superiority of the European race, and they treated Indians with great contempt. All right. So now, see, on one hand, they had introduced the principle of equality among the Indians, but on the other hand, they brought racial discrimination where they treated Indians inferior just because they were lower, inferior as compared to these Europeans, Britishers. So again, these Indians who were there, see, this is their own land, this is their own place. But somebody coming and making them feel you are so inferior, you are brown, we are, as we still have whites, browns, blacks, racial discriminations. Certain places still practice this. So this again hurted their sentiments, right? They again felt bad. Okay, you're coming in my territory and you are treating me only as inferior. All right, something like that. Have you all understood the social causes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's revise quickly. Number one.
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah.
Ma'am, number one, ma'am, the Britishers abolished sati and child female infanticide. Second, the Britishers
They brought
introduced
widow
widow
remarriage act,
remarriage
they brought women's education.
and women's education. Ma'am, this
Second,
caused a great widespread. Ma'am, second, the missionaries converted the people to British missionaries converted the Hindu and Muslim peoples to Christianity. These practices had hurt the Indians.
especially
Ma'am,
which,
can I
which
explain the
group?
third?
The Hindus and the Muslims.
Small Muslims.
Yeah. Next is
Ma'am, can I explain the third one?
Yes, Aditya.
Ma'am, the introduction of the Western education, that it was a great resentment among the Indians, as the importance of the Pandits and the Maulvi was
Attacked
they were
because of the
not
witch.
attacked, and they were not more valuable like that. So the office of the inspector of schools was referred as Shaitane Daftar.
Okay, next. What is the next? Yes,
Ma'am,
yeah.
can I-
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, the next was that these Britishers gave rise to railway posts and railway trains and all of that. But the Indians were very fearful of the intentions and they thought it was full Western magic.
Yes, very good. Yes, Raj.
Ma'am, the next is that the British judicial system had introduced equality between different castes, and this was seen as this was seen by the Indians, mostly the Pandits, as Brahmins, as a threat to their caste system.
Right. Very good. Very good. Next, last point. Who will give the last point?
Ma'am, may I?
Priyanshu, you all answered. Priyanshu, last point.
Yes,
Racial
ma'am. The
discrimination.
last point was that the British followed a policy of racial discrimination, and they were because they were convinced of the superiority of the European race. They treated the Indians with great contempt and never made an effort to interact with them socially.
Correct. Correct. Okay. So now we have completed economic cause. We have completed social, political cause. We completed social cause. Now we are going to do military causes. Okay. Now we will see what are the different military causes. Can you scroll down? Okay. The revolt of 1857 started as a mutiny in the of the sepoys in the company's army. Please underline this. The sepoys had over the years helped the company to conquer India with dedication and loyalty. By the middle of 19th century, however, there was a growing disaffection among the sepoys, especially within the ranks of upper caste, that is Hindus, that is Rajputs and Brahmins. Okay, they had numerous grievances. So basically, military causes was related with the sepoys mutiny. Okay, now in this, what there was a great dissatisfaction among the people, especially the upper caste people, upper caste Hindus. Okay, the Rajputs and the Brahmins. Now, what exactly had happened? Why the military people were also disappointed with the Britishers when they had started ruling? Number one, the sepoys had helped the British to establish their empire in India, but they were neither appreciated nor rewarded. Okay, it was the sepoys who helped the Britishers, right, so that they could settle down in India, but the Britishers never bothered to appreciate their efforts. All right. On the contrary, what they did, they were treated with great contempt by the British officers. Okay, so instead of appreciation, they started contempting these people. Next reason is there was grave discrimination between Indian sepoy and British counterpart. So you know, you had as you all know, from England they had called most of the British soldiers who settled down in India. You all remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And they also those soldiers were given Indian territories to stay. They were the expenditure was paid by these Indian rulers only, but there was a great discrimination. Okay, whether it was Indian Sipahi and between the Indian Sipahi and the British soldier. Okay, a capable and dedicated Sipahi could not rise above the post of Subedar. Please underline this. What was the difference? Even if the person, even if the Indian Sipahi was capable enough, he was not given the post which was above Subedar. Okay, so Subedar was the last position, highest position for the Indian sepoys. The Indian soldiers were paid much less salary as compared to the British soldiers. This is again underlined. These are all the important points. Slowly and gradually, how these Indian sepoys started getting disappointed with the Britishers. Although they were working for the Britishers, they never appreciated. Although they were capable, they were never given higher position. And although they were doing the same work as compared to the British soldiers, still they were not given equal salary. Okay, lodging and boarding facilities for the sepoys were also far inferior that as compared to the British soldiers. So not just the payment, even the standard of living. Okay, that means the lodging and the boarding facilities, whatever facilities were given to the British soldiers, it was not given to the Indian sepoys. You can underline that. Lodging and boarding facilities for sepoys were also very inferior. Many of the senior British officers were old and incompetent men who could not command and respect the Indian soldiers. Okay, so even if the British soldier is old, incompetent, still he was, given the higher position comparatively. Please underline, many senior Britishers were old and incompetent men who could not command, but still the Indian soldiers had to give them respect. All right. In 1856, an act was passed which made it compulsory for all new recruits to serve overseas. This was very important. This is very important. Okay, from here, see, all other things, they were at least trying to cope up with, although there was impartiality, although they were treated inferiority, but still they were trying to manage. Indians were trying to cope up with, but this is something which they did not like. Okay, it is something which had reached to the heights of their compromising situation. What was it? That whoever was newly recruited in the Indian sepoy, he had to serve overseas. Okay, that means they had to travel to different countries, whichever countries these Britishers would give them. Okay, and serve from there. Now they will, for that, they'll be away from their family, they'll be away from their home. and they'll have lots of challenges as well. Now, this hurt the sentiments of the Hindus because they believed that overseas travel would lead to a loss of caste. Okay, they had this belief. Okay, initially Indians, Hindus, they had this belief that if you all travel overseas, you lose your caste, you lose your faith. All right, so they did not wanted to do that. The sepoys interpreted the regulation of another attack on their caste and religion. So they interpreted this decision as another attack on their caste and religion. You already saw how the different attacks which the Indians considered on their religious feelings and sentiments. So this also they considered as an
Excuse
attack
me,
on their
ma'am.
religious sentiments. After the annexation of Awadh, the Nawab's army was disbanded. Please underline, this is very important. When Awadh was annexed, the Nawab's army was disbanded. The soldier lost their means of livelihood and their bitterness against the Britishers increased. So the soldiers, you know how Awadh was annexed on what basis?
On the grounds of maladministration.
Very nice, very good. On the grounds of maladministration. So as soon as Awadh was annexed, what did they do? They lost their means of livelihood, and the hatred towards these Britishers increased a lot. Now the last point is the Indian soldiers greatly outnumbered the British soldiers. That means compared to the British soldiers, the Indian soldiers were what? Very less. In 1856, the number of sepoys in the British army was more than 5 times of the British soldiers. Okay, outnumbered here, that means here what they were doing, and you know what, the Britishers had forced these Indian sepoys even to participate in World War I and fight in World War I, representing the Britishers, representing England. Now in this, if you all know, if at all the Indian soldier gets he's died in the war, as it is not going to affect the Britishers, right? So
Yes.
they used to treat the Indian sepoys in that manner. Okay,
Okay.
this emboldened the sepoys to take up arms against their foreign masters. So these were all the reasons because of which the Indian sepoys were disappointed, and they thought, this is high time that we should stand up against the Britishers. Foreign masters over here referred to whom?
British.
Ma'am, the Britishers.
Yes, we will stop here for now. I think it's time up.
Excuse me,